Fox News.
America's listening to Fox News.
Howdy, Chili's is serving y'all some Texas-sized family meal, because everything's bigger in Texas. Enjoy full racks of Chili's world-famous baby back ribs, margarita chicken, savory shrimp, beef fajita, smoked jalapeno sausages, mashed potatoes, and corn on the cob. Man, this meal's bigger than Bill's, but it ain't breaking the bank. Chili's has Texas-sized family meals for just $45 to feed your crew of 3 to 6 folks. For your youngins, just add $5 for a kids meal. Chili's, more life and bigger meals happen here.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
We buy a homeowner's policy and never give it another thought until something happens. Life brings changes, and our coverage needs can change. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
The U.S. and Russia locked horns over Ukraine and other security issues Monday with no sign of progress.
White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki says the power to de-escalate tensions in Europe rests with the Russians.
There are 100,000 troops at the border now, obviously returning those troops to the barracks, conveying to us their intention of doing that.
Psaki spoke after a round of talks between U.S. and Russian diplomats in Geneva, described by the State Department as useful but without any deadline set. Russia has demanded concessions about NATO membership. Ask the U.S. calls non-starters. Additional talks are set with European partners this week. Jared Halpern, Fox News.
Real estate tycoon Robert Durst dies while serving a life sentence in prison. Durst, who was convicted last year of killing his best friend, died of what California prison officials say were natural causes related to several illnesses. He was 78. For those dealing with today's Arctic blast, it might be difficult to learn last year was one of the warmest on record.
2021 ranks as the 4th warmest year on record in the U.S., and last month proved to be the warmest December ever recorded. Information from the National Centers for Environmental Information came just hours after scientists in the European Union said last year was the world's 5th hottest on record. Russell Vose with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's branch says scientists expect similar conditions in the years and decades to come. The report also cites 20 weather and climate disasters last year in the U.S. with losses of more than $1 billion each as analysts warn of the dangers of a changing climate. Rich Dennison, Fox News.
And Pope Francis took aim at cancel culture during his annual address Monday, warning that it's a kind of one-track thinking that risks silencing important voices. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Half a day. This is Clara Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
Always here to help you. This island is our home. Through the years we've been a friend to the neighbors we have known. Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's what my friend Tom Knighton says also. He's got a column on bearing arms, and this is what he's talking about today. USA Today. Hold the booze until I finish with the please, with the post, please. USA Today hope they could smear gun rights advocates by linking them to Nazis. Sounds like USA Today. It was a tenuous link at best, as Ranjit pointed out quite well. Frankly, it was one of those things that were designed to infuriate the pro-gun side of the debate and provide ammunition to the gun control crowd. The problem was that it was ammunition is so weak it's pathetic. Regardless, you can't let claims like that fester because someone will believe it. Gun rights groups sure aren't ignoring it. And then here's a quote. Gun rights organizations are taking aim at anti-gun propaganda after USA Today ran a story alleging that Second Amendment activism can be a gateway to extremist ideologies like the neo-Nazi movement. Now, it used to be that you could read a paper or a publication, et cetera, and know what every single word meant. Not anymore. I still have a column here that says 10 politically correct but factually false words and phrases to stop using immediately. So words that used to be commonplace and easily understood have taken on new meanings. As an example, extremist ideologies. You know what that means in the world of the left?
Conservative.
Conservatives, yeah. Neo-Nazis, you know what that means? That means Republicans, yeah. Gun rights activism can be a gateway to extremist ideologies like the neo-Nazi movement. Carlos further tries to prove his point by quoting Daryl Lamont Jenkins of the far-left One People's Project, who said he went to a gun show in 1995, just yesterday, really, and there was a guy that had a table of all kinds of weird stuff. Yeah. The article quotes multiple left-wing, quote, experts while asking not a single gun rights organization for balance. Advocates of the constitutional right to self-defense strongly rebuff the story's central thesis. This article is a piece of anti-gun propaganda, the National Rifle Association's director of media, Amy Hunter, told me exclusively. And what a name for the director of media relations at NRA, Amy Hunter.
She was born into the role.
Uh-huh. The Second Amendment is part of the foundation and fabric of our country. Tens of millions of gun owners practice a safe and responsible exercise of their rights daily. The Second Amendment is a gateway to personal safety, individual liberty, and a proper understanding of the Constitution, Eric Pratt, Senior Vice President of Gun Owners of America, said in an exclusive statement to his author. It's not radical, but rather perfectly normal to want to be armed for protection from common thug as well as tyrannical government. Both Hunter and Pratt are 100% correct. And USA Today piece was nothing more than an attempted Second Amendment hit piece. I'm shocked, I tell you. Seeking to smear all of us on the gun rights side of the debate as Nazis through guilt by association. However, let's be honest, this is going to happen again. People like the USA Today writer are looking for things to blast us for. So we need to mind our business and keep everything squeaky clean. If not, they will try to and blast the entire community for it. Interesting use of the words blast in a story about gun rights. Then again, even if everything is above board, people like this will still try and make up stuff while downplaying anything that the left has actually done. Gun rights have nothing to do with extremism, and anyone with half a brain and a desire to see the truth, that's nobody on the left, that's for sure. You get two of them together, you got one whole brain, maybe.
H-O-L-E?
Whole, yes. And find out for themselves. While there may be extremists who also support gun rights, there are extremists who support any position you care to name on American politics. I mean, the El Paso shooter was an extreme environmentalist. Figures. Where are the pieces attacking Greenpeace as a haven for extremists? At the end of the day, though the gun rights community doesn't actually expect any better from the media, we've seen this kind of thing time and again, and will happen time and time again. We just wish they could be less pathetic about it. Then again, this is from the same publication that freaked out about chainsaw bayonets. So what do you expect? And there's a link to chainsaw bayonets.
I want one.
Yeah.
I got to get a firearm first.
Yeah. So, extremism. Barry Goldwater ran against LBJ in 1964, and people were so happy that he didn't win, that LBJ won. Yeah, big mistake, huh? And they crucified Barry for saying this. I'm remembering it as best as I can. Extremism in defense of liberty is not a vice. Something like timidity in that defense is not a virtue. That was Barry Goldwater. Okay, so we've done the Second Amendment. Let's turn now to Zemi Ikotny. So, got another one here. I sometimes save these and put them beside my bed in case I'm struck with insomnia. A couple of these will put you straight to sleep. Today, our view: take time to keep trails, beaches, reefs, and parks clean. Don't leave a ring around the bathtub. Brush your teeth before you go to bed. Don't eat peas with your knife.
Well, you're not going to be afraid of getting a paper cut. It's not too deep.
That's for sure. Yeah, well, the Daily News put something on the editorial page today, and that's all I'm going to say about it. To glorify it with the title editorial, it's kind of like what Tom Knighton was talking about. Then we have the Post. Lack of local capability to test for Omicron compromises healthcare decision-making. Last month, we heard the Guam Department of Public Health and Social Services decided to buy a $25,000 testing machine so DPHSS will have its own ability to confirm presence of Omicron or any other variant of the virus that causes Wuhan virus, COVID-19. The machine will be up and running by next month if things go as planned. On one hand, it is a welcome development. On the other hand, it's a very late decision to make, with the machine expected to be up and running just a month shy of the 2 years since the Wuhan virus pandemic arrived on Guam. After nearly $2 billion worth of pandemic assistance funds from the federal government flowed into Guam, the local government only recently decided to buy this machine. Wow. It's pretty expensive, $25,000. When all we had was $2 billion. We have seen the purchases of new vehicles, golf carts, and other big-ticket equipment GovGuam would normally not be able to pay to buy. Over $280 million to jumpstart building a new government hospital is even in the cards. The machine for testing Wuhan virus variants is more urgent, but it wasn't treated that way. Our wait for confirmation whether the Omicron variant is circulating on island has now lasted well over a month. The delay in purchasing equipment that will help arm the government, doctors, and patients with information that will help in the healthcare decision-making has come back to haunt GovGuam. We have heard for weeks that the Omicron variant is presumed to be on Guam based on the presence of Omicron cases in Hawaii. This lack of confirmation and the lack of locally available machine to test for variants has implications on people's healthcare decisions. It turns out, according to U.S. health officials, that certain monoclonal antibody treatments for the early stages of Wuhan virus do not work well for patients infected with the Omicron variant. So people cannot decide if taking monoclonal antibody treatments is right for them without knowing which variant they may have been in contact with. On December 23, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services announced it would pause shipments of 2 monoclonal antibody treatments made by Regeneron Pharmaceuticals and Eli Lilly, which laboratory tests have shown are less effective against the Omicron variant. The WAPO reported Monday. That was a report from the WAPO. The Biden administration agreed December 31 to start shipping the Regeneron and Lilly products to the states last week, but the health officials also acknowledged that while monoclonal antibodies worked well with the Delta variant, they might have little effect on the infections caused by the Omicron variant. In the vast majority of cases, according to U.S. health experts, the WAPO quoted by the WAPO, physicians making treatment decisions do not know whether their patient is affected by Omicron or Delta because the little genome seeking is being done. Even when tests are sequenced, the results are usually too late to be considered in treatment deliberations, the Post stated. If Omicron now accounts for most of the U.S. cases, as Rochelle Walensky said Wednesday, the newly reauthorized therapies will have little effect, the Post added. It's a shame that the delay in buying a healthcare machine that's worth the cost of a mid-sized car is now causing our local government to basically be blind. Ooh, aren't you supposed to say visually impaired, Jose? To basically be blind about the state of Omicron infections on the island and to rely on off-island test sites now that have taken weeks to get back to us. Time is ticking, and healthcare risks are greater without all the information doctors need to help people survive the pandemic. And an announcement from Janela Carrera. Don't worry. We'll have the machine before we've cured the virus. Maybe only by a matter of days, but we'll make it. Yeah, that's the irony here. By the time the machine gets here, we won't need it anymore. However, good job, Guam Daily Post. That was a real editorial. There you go. Blue star for the Guam Daily Post. And that takes the Post up to 261. PDN 5, Candid 5. Okay, so much for Zemi Kutney. Let's see what we've got on the card for this afternoon. Well, I got to start out with Paul Zerzan and systemic racism, of course. I got to get my sign here. Yeah, systemic racism. Remember, systemic racism is the narrative versus the truth. And in my cleverly designed visual aid here, the word red, the letters are orange. That's the truth. The narrative is the word red. So the narrative would tell you, no, it's not orange, it's red. When the facts would tell you it is orange. So we encounter that all the time here. And I see it as my job here as your ever-loving host of the top-rated afternoon talk show in at least the Western Pacific to let you know what the facts are and where the narrative falls apart. So that's why I keep talking about Paul Zerzan and systemic racism. I'll probably talk about him again on Monday when we go back to Hope Cristobal's screen test. The popular demand for that is so great that I probably should play it more often than once a week, but that's about all I can take, to be honest with you. All right. Here's what we got on the card then. Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. Ray versus the fence. And I'm not talking about someone who buys stolen goods either. Tall Tales versus gaslighting. This of course, involves the governor. GFT versus GovGuam. Fedenko versus Max and his never-ending search for teeth. Drive-Through Jack versus KFT, as you were KFC, yeah, and a plus from Taco Bell. Drive-Through Jack being our expert witness when it comes to drive-throughs. Anything you ever wanted to know, just ask Drive-Through Jack. Does he have a theme song, Jose? Drive-Through Jack? Give us a couple bars. There you go. Come and get your chow, boys. Come and get your chow. Drive-Through Jack's theme song, Chow Call. And then we've got New York City versus U.S. citizens. Hillary versus Brandon. Diversity, inclusion, and equity versus equality. And if there's time, we'll go back to Tall Tales versus Separatists for a few minutes. All right, let's start out with Ray versus the fence. Every day around 1350 to 1400, JFK students can be seen jaywalking en masse across the busy intersection. Wow. Is that a third-degree felony, jaywalking? It ought to be.
I thought it's JFK walking.
Uh-huh. Rather than just plain old J, get the whole thing in there. Yeah. No, I have to, full disclosure, I have to confess I am a serial jaywalker. I've jaywalked all over the world, and so far, knock on wood, I've never been busted. But it's not a good thing to do, especially on that particular corner, especially when you're too young to have perfected the art. So JFK students can be seen JFK walking en masse across a busy intersection. There's no supervision from the school as students cross. But the incident occurs in clear view of bus drivers and radio talk show hosts, such as the host of the Ray Gibson Show, which airs 6 to 10, Monday through Friday, right here on The Point. Just get up in the morning, you set your radio dial to 93.3, and that's it. You don't need to touch it for the rest of the day. Going on with the article. This has been an ongoing issue, which is the way PNC News says this has been going on ever since. They just don't know how to phrase it. Drivers heading down that area are advised to slow down to avoid accidents, though there has not yet been any reported cases of vehicle-to-pedestrian accidents involving the students in the area. Therefore, it may be a good place to build a Chinese restaurant. PNC reached out. They couldn't just call her up, right? They had to reach out to Michelle Francas, interim public information officer for the Guam Department of Education, to alert her of the issue. She said she would follow up with JFK admin. Wow. Action. She's going to follow up. GDOE Superintendent John Fernandez states that he is not aware of any complaints or reports about this matter. I wonder what planet he lives on. But JFK administration has been alerted to this potential situation so they can address this with students who walk to Kmart after dismissal. He adds that he will be sharing the video with the Tamuning mayor and their partners at the police department. This is not the first time that JFK students have jaywalked to get to Kmart. There is a fence erected along the center of the roadway, says Fernandez. And Ray has entered it in a worldwide contest for the most ugly road appendage in the entire world. And he's pretty confident that it's going to win. Now, you talk about going through the motions or living in the land of good enough. They build a fence, but the key part of the fence has been missing for 20 years. Someone hit it with a car, probably thought it was the entrance to a drive-through restaurant, and took out the fence. And the fence is so important that it was repaired immediately. It was never repaired. So it's a really good impediment to anyone who wants to jaywalk, half a block away from the intersection. That isn't how jaywalking works. People don't jaywalk because they're looking for exercise. They don't jaywalk in protest to traffic signals. People jaywalk because they're looking for the shortest, fastest way across the street. So if you're going to build a fence, you got to fence off the shortest, fastest way across the street. Otherwise, you just wind up with something that Ray has described as butt ugly. And if anything, I think he is guilty of understatement there. It's at least butt ugly squared, if not cubed. And it does no good because the essential part has been missing ever since. Fernandez said he is not aware of any recent complaints or reports about this matter, but JFK administration has been alerted to this potential situation. This was not the first time that JFK students have jaywalked to get to Kmart. There is a fence erected along the center of the roadway, says Fernandez, intended to prevent jaywalking. End of quote. But the fence runs a few yards short of the crosswalk. And in that stretch of traffic, students can be seen illegally crossing. At 2 p.m. today, PNC confirmed the situation is ongoing. Well, good for PNC. Yeah. So I think we need to monitor this, Jose. We probably need a report on JFK walking every day. Okay, next item here is Tall Tales versus gaslighting. This story was on the card yesterday. It was the governor versus reality. John O'Connor ran the story for the Daily Post. Governor's $10 million war claims plan takes effect. And the story says that the governor gave the go signal after the 30-day window for lawmakers to adopt or reject administration's plan resulted in no action from the legislature. Okay, let's take a short break and we'll come back to gaslighting here.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1990. 1959, and they will continue to be there for you in the years to come. Get a personal loan for that summer vacation or to pay off those long overdue bills. Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $3,900 by calling Family Finance in Hagåtña, now at the old Nanbo Insurance Building at 475-4545, Upper Tumon 647-5626, or in Dededo 633-4473. Family Finance, here to serve you.
Get a box of Post or Kellogg cereal for only 99 cents when you fuel up on $35 or more of mid-grade or premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See store for details. Get a 75-ounce bottle of Dawn dish soap for only $5.95 when you fuel up on $35 or more of mid-grade or premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See store for details. Get a Bounty paper towel 2-pack for only 99 cents when you fuel up on $35 or more of mid-grade or premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See store for details. Circle K. Take it easy.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
So, yesterday I pointed out that bills aren't passed by default. You don't make law by default. And I read a part of Section 1423B, that's the Organic Act, that says the quorum of the legislature shall consist of a simple majority of its members. No bill shall become law unless it shall have been passed at a meeting at which a quorum was present by the affirmative vote of majority of the members present and voting, which vote shall be by yeas and nays. So the fact that the governor sent a bill over to the legislature and the 30-day deadline passed is interesting, but really inconsequential. Then the governor says, well, you know, the missing piece here is the appropriation. Well, the legislature did a substitute bill of what the governor sent over, and the last section, maybe the governor didn't know it because it's the last section of the bill and she got tired reading before she got there, but the bill would add a new section 13.306. Notwithstanding any other provision of law, the sum of $10 million is appropriated from the general fund to the Department of Administration to pay certified claims to compensable victims, etc. So how badly can we screw things up here? So the Post got it right today. They got it right in spades, actually. So here's the story that ran in the Post today. Although the administration has begun to work to open up the filing of claims for another round of financial reparations for the Chamorro people on Guam who suffered during the Japanese occupation, island senators still must appropriate $10 million before they can be paid. It's in the bill. The Leon Guerrero administration has proposed money for a local war claims program, which was enacted late last year, come from the local government's general fund. That's where appropriations usually come from. Governor Leon Guerrero told lawmakers he was taking immediate action to execute a submitted implementation plan on Friday, including work to create official applications for a reparation. But further action from the Guam legislature is needed, including approving an appropriation for the war claims program. Local legal expert Robert Klitzkie. Gosh, should I be embarrassed, Jose?
Nope, you are a reliable source.
Yeah, but this one says I'm a local legal expert.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I am kind of proud of my humility. So, you know, I guess I should say, oh, shucks, you shouldn't have.
Well, they didn't say incredibly legal expert.
Yeah, I guess. Local legal expert Robert Klitzkie clarified for the Post that the papers the governor sent to the legislature did not become law through the inaction during a 30-day window. A bill which is in the form in which the implementation was submitted can only pass the legislature in a legislative session with a quorum, said Klitzkie, who is a former senator, former judge pro tem, transparency advocate, and All Tales talk show host. The governor has called the appropriation the final piece for a new round of war claims. So is the governor saying that missing the deadline, you can't appropriate by default, but you can pass a law by default? This is really Abbott and Costello and who's on first, right? It really is.
A whole lot of I don't know.
Yeah. You got someone who ordinarily plays shortstop playing every position on the team. I don't know. Yeah. We look forward to working with senators on providing the $10 million. Some senators have expressed concern with the general fund, preferring claims be paid using special fund created specifically for World War II reparations. The general fund has been bolstered by reported revenue surpluses. And well, let's see. The general fund collected $62 million above budget in the last fiscal year, BBMR reported previously. Senators also could potentially affect the administration's implementation plan, since it, along with appropriation, is being considered through Bill 230-36, which the governor was required to submit by previous legislation. Let's see. Senator Joe San Augustine posed the administration doesn't agree with the concerns about the program's funding source or the length of time to accept applications, etc. Some have an incorrect understanding that the pool of applicants is larger than what it is, she said. This is Paco San Augustine. The Department of Administration will soon begin providing application forms for reparations to the public ahead of a filing deadline that will be decided by the Adjudication Committee. That group will be made up of members appointed by the governor. Now, once again, suppose the legislature doesn't pass this bill, and these people have filled out the papers and turned them all in, and then, I'm sorry, but, the legislature didn't pass the bill. But, Governor, you said the 30 days went by. There's something else that I need to comment on this whole rigmarole here, and that is that there's an adjudication committee. Let's see if it's named anywhere here. Yeah.
The very bottom?
Adjudication committee established. The adjudication committee, this is in the legislature substitute bill, and I think it was in the one that the governor sent over. The adjudication committee shall consist of 5 members. 1, the executive director of the Commission on Decolonization, or their designee. So Siamese twins. There's Melvin Borja, and Melvin Wampat. Siamese twins are the director of the Decolonization Committee. The governor of Guam, or their designee. Now, that one shouldn't be that hard. I think the governor of Guam is a female. The speaker of the legislature, or their designee. The president of the mayor's council, or their designee, which cannot be a goose or a gander. And a member of the general public appointed by the governor. So you've got the Commission on Decolonization, executive branch, the governor, executive branch, speaker, legislative branch, mayor's council, executive branch, general public. You can't have people from 2 different branches on these boards and commissions. There's something called the separation of powers doctrine. And the Organic Act says that the government of Guam shall consist of 3 separate branches. Now, this is not new stuff. There's a case called Springer versus Philippine Islands. The United States Supreme Court case, Springer versus the Philippine Islands, it was decided in 1927, that lays this out. And let's see. A short quote here. Among the three branches of government was described by Chief Justice John Marshall early in the nation's history, second Chief Justice. The difference between the departments undoubtedly is that the legislature makes, the executive executes, and the judiciary construes law. Over 100 years later, the Supreme Court reaffirmed this basic constitutional division between the three branches of our government in Springer versus Philippine Islands. The court declared invalid certain acts of the Philippine legislature vesting the voting power of stock owned by the government of the Philippines in a committee consisting of the Governor General, President of the Senate, Speaker of the House. In its opinion, the court said, the Organic Act for the Philippine Islands, following the rule established by American constitutions, both state and federal, divides the government into three separate departments, the legislative, executive, and judicial. And this separation and the consequent inclusive character of the powers conferred upon each three departments is basic and vital, not merely a matter of governmental mechanism. The legislative power is distinguished from the executive power as the authority to make laws, but not to enforce them or appoint the agents charged with the duty of such enforcement. The latter are executive functions. Not having the power of appointment unless expressly granted or incidental to its powers, a legislature cannot engraft executive duties upon a legislative office, since that would be to usurp the power of appointment by indirection, though the case might be different if the additional duties were devolved upon an appointee of the executive. This decision has never been qualified by the Supreme Court or lower federal courts, has generally been followed by state courts with similar questions. Earlier in the Supreme Court had held that the duties which the House of Representatives attempted to confer upon a committee were judicial in character and not susceptible of exercise by the legislative department. That was a case called Kilburn versus Thompson, decided in 1880. The present proviso cannot be sustained on the theory it is proper condition attached to an appropriation. It is recognized that Congress may grant or withhold appropriations as it chooses, and when making an appropriation may direct the purposes to which the appropriation shall be devoted. It may also impose conditions with respect to the use of appropriations, provided always that the conditions do not require the operation of the government in a way forbidden by the... Anyhow, you just can't do that. You can't have the speaker on an executive commission, and deciding who gets the money is an executive function. And of course, if that's true for this commission, this War Claims Commission, it's true in spades for the Self-Determination Commission, which has a nice mix, minority, a minority of the legislature, et cetera. You just can't do that, folks. It's called the doctrine of the separation of powers. And now that you've heard it from a local legal expert, you need to stop doing it. Very good. Thank you, Jose. Next item on the, well, let's take a short break here, and then we'll go into GFT versus Gov Guam.
Try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Okay, so here we go. Got about 15 more minutes till that big halftime show that we're all looking forward to here. Next on the card, GFT versus Gov Guam. This is an article that ran in the Post. Plaintiffs oppose dismissal of double pay class action suit. You'll recall that just last week, Steve DePazio lost his case for double pay, a police officer. Here's how this one goes. Plaintiffs to a class action lawsuit seeking pandemic-era double pay from the government of Guam are opposing the government's motion to dismiss their case. The plaintiffs filed the opposition Friday. The complaint was first filed in October 2020, but an amended version was filed September 2021. Try a string around your finger to remind yourself of that. Listing the government of Guam and the governor as the governor as defendants. The suit is represented by 10 plaintiffs. The suit is represented by 10 plaintiffs. The suit is filed by 10 plaintiffs, members of the Guam Federation of Teachers Union, but it involves more than 500 employees allegedly denied double pay during the Wuhan virus public health emergency. Double pay for essential government workers is an issue that arose during the early months of the pandemic when the government was operating at a limited capacity and some agencies were closed. It involves Rule 8.406, the Department Administration rules, which guide compensation and leave matters during natural disasters and other conditions. The Attorney General stated in a May 2020 opinion that the employee's facility must be closed for the employee who still must work to benefit from Rule 8.406, in addition to other requirements. Gov Guam moved to dismiss the amended class action lawsuit in November 2021. Assistant Attorney General Jordan Lawrence Pauloon states in part that the plaintiffs still failed to allege the necessary preconditions under Rule 8.406. Here's a quote from the papers, or maybe it's from counsel. Instead, they rely on false equivalencies. While DOA Rule 8406 requires, among other things, agencies to be closed and other employees to be on excused leave with pay, plaintiffs conflate these terms with closed to the public and essentially on excused leave. Pauloon wrote, adding that the court should dismiss the case because the plaintiff's allegations are fatal to the case. Now, I told you to tie a string around your finger here about the case, an amended complaint being filed in September 21. And I suspect that an amended complaint was filed because a motion to dismiss was granted, and leave to amend shall be freely granted at least once. But if you don't have the right phrasing in your complaint, you can't win. You can't even stay in court. And that's what the Attorney General is saying. He's not saying you guys got screwed, therefore you should get paid. What he's saying is you've got to plead it right, or you don't get anything. Pauloon also added that based on the amended complaint, the court lacks jurisdiction in the case, and Guam's sovereign immunity is a component for subject matter jurisdiction. Attorneys Josh Walsh and Joseph Rossano represent the plaintiffs. They stated in their opposition file last week that while sovereign immunity normally shields Gov Guam from certain claims, various legal structures were established to allow government employees to seek pay due to them. That's an interesting statement. They also stated the view that an agency must be fully shuttered and not just closed to the public was rejected by the court in its review of a prior motion to dismiss, And the government's insistence on that interpretation ignores the plain language of the DOA rule, which states an appointing authority shall determine whether the affected facility or portions of the facility are to be closed. More, the government's insistence on total agency closure as a prerequisite to receiving emergency pay leads to an absurd conclusion that the rules and regs were drafted in a manner to never provide elevated pay to those government first responders, police officers, firefighters, and emergency medical personnel who work for agencies that could never be closed in total. The following for the workers stated, adding that such an interpretation can't apply. Now, you got to go back to when this all came up, and I thought it was a silly rule. It's a silly rule. First of all, it says that under certain conditions, a director can tell the people in his agency, go home, and you're going to stay on the payroll, you won't be charged for leave. And then the director can say, except you guys have to continue working. And if you continue working, you'll get two kinds of pay, the pay you get for working and the stay-at-home pay. Since everybody got paid for staying home, it's only fair that you get that too. And I describe that as a sense of barnyard equity. People, first of all, there has to be a way of dealing with the emergencies without having people to go home and make as much as they would if they worked. There must be some way around, some way of people working, remotely or something like that. That's for management to figure out. But this whole idea that you get paid because you work because everybody else had the day off, it's not a smart idea, and apparently the courts agree with me, at least in the case of Steve Topazzi, and I suspect they will in this case, because you'd have to plead that the agency was closed, and there's technical language here that employees were sent home on excused leave. So if that doesn't work, then no double pay. All right, I've reminded that I clipped this story to Every Child versus GFT. Adequate Education Act lacks teeth. Well, it looks like maybe and my explanation was that Tim Fedenko lacks teeth. And maybe when it comes to securing the legal rights of its members, we're still looking for dentures. Next item on the card is Fedenko versus Max. And this one also ran in the Post. Even as public school officials take count of the number of students in the classrooms to address a teacher shortage by shifting some teachers where they're needed the most, local teachers union isn't optimistic it's going to work. And they have decided to take the following action. No, they haven't decided to do anything except some heavy-duty kvetching. I don't think you can pull from other schools, then you'll be short as well because a shortage is a shortage, said Tim Fedenko, president of the Guam Federation of Teachers. This is why we have drafted model legislation to give our teachers salaries that would make them competitive in the market for teachers so we wouldn't have shortages. Did Tim Fedenko really say that? No. Not even close. Fedenko said he doubts there's a classroom with less than the maximum student capacity. We are maxed out, Fedenko said. Guam education officials are taking count of students in each classroom in what's called cross-leveling. The idea is if there are classrooms with fewer than the union contract teacher-student ratio, GDOE will combine classes to reach that ratio. The goal is to be able to free up other teachers to take on classrooms currently being monitored by a substitute teacher or a school aide. Superintendent John Fernandez says this doesn't necessarily mean that all classrooms will have a maximum number of students, which runs to about 28 depending on grade level. That's because as you get into different subjects like social studies, math, and language arts, it gets more complicated. GWE's enrollment dropped from 28,000 to 26,600 students within the last 2 school years. However, GWE is experiencing a shortage of teachers, which isn't a new situation, but it's been aggravated by the COVID-19 pandemic. GWE is about 2,000 teachers, but at any given time, GWE has 50 to 70 teachers vacancies. There's always turnover. We're having teachers teaching during their prep period to help cover classes, trying to find the places, utilize substitutes, so forth, Fernandez said. To tackle the perennial teacher shortage, DOE is actively recruiting teachers, which puts it in competition with school systems across the nation, which are also working to fill vacancies. And this is where Fidenko's model legislation comes in, right? That he never thought of. Fidenko said that pulling teachers from one classroom or school to another may not provide the relief GDO is seeking. Well, if they're short in one school, they're going to cross-level to another school. Classes are maxed right now. This kind of reminds me of the guy who's the tall man, the guy as tall as I was, was complaining that his blanket was too short because it didn't cover his feet. So his friend said, I'll tell you what I'll do. He got out his scissors, cut off a foot from the top of the blanket, sewed it on the bottom, and said, here you go, buddy.
Finally, perfect size.
Yeah. Yeah. If they're short in one school, they're going to cross-level. I don't see any cross-leveling other than pulling teachers that are working downtown, Fidenko said. Peer coaches, that kind of leveling. Yeah, there's a lot of teachers working downtown that could be brought into the classroom. And then Fidenko mentioned, what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. All right, I'm going to finish this up right after the big halftime show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The U.S. shatters a global COVID record. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. The U.S. reported 1,484,000 new COVID cases on Monday, the most for any single day anywhere on the planet, as the Omicron variant shows no signs of slowing. While new cases hit a record, so have hospitalizations, which have doubled in 3 weeks, according to a Reuters tally. The White House announces more help is on the way for Americans in paying for costly COVID testing.
The White House says insurance companies will be required to cover 8 over-the-counter home coronavirus tests per person each month beginning Saturday, expanding access to highly sought-after kits as Americans continue to grapple with the surge in coronavirus cases. And in case you're wondering, no, all 500 million kits will not arrive at the same time. They'll be delivered in batches over the next several months. The U.S. Postal Service will handle fulfillment and shipment of the test right to Americans' doorsteps.
Fox's Kevin Cork. School bells will ring again in Chicago.
After a productive day at the bargaining table, I'm pleased to report that the Chicago Teachers Union House of Delegates voted to end their work stoppage.
Mayor Lori Lightfoot says students will resume classes Wednesday. The announcement came after leaders of the teachers union accepted a city offer Monday night to ramp up COVID safety protocols. Union President Jesse Sharkey.
We have been dealing with increasingly difficult conditions as positivity rates rose and as the pandemic developed.
The two sides have been locked in a bitter standoff that canceled classes for 5 days in the nation's third largest school district. And the chairman of the Federal Reserve acknowledges high inflation is taking a toll on American families. America's listening to Fox News.
Half a day. This is Clara Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
Howdy, Chili's is serving y'all some Texas-sized family meal, because everything's bigger in Texas. Enjoy full racks of Chili's world-famous baby back ribs, margarita chicken, savory shrimp, beef fajita, smoked jalapeno sausages, mashed potatoes, and corn on the cob. Man, this meal's bigger than Bill's, but it ain't breaking the bank. Chili's has Texas-sized family meals for just $45 to feed your crew of 3 to 6 folks. For your youngins, just add $5 for a kid's meal. Chili's, more life and bigger meals happen here.
There's a new college champ in town.
After 42 years, a national title heads home to Athens.
Georgia on the mountaintop. Demons be gone, and the drought is over.
Call courtesy of ESPN. Georgia defeats rival Alabama Monday 33-18 to win the college football playoff championship for the first time in program history and give the Bulldogs their first national championship since 1980. A bit of revenge for the Dogs after falling short to the Crimson Tide in the SEC championship last month. Georgia QB Stetson Bennett with 2 passing TDs. He ended up being named the offensive player of the game. Defensive MVP honors going to Georgia cornerback Lewis Seen. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
Stores across the country beginning to report more shortages of goods and supplies.
As photos of empty store shelves make the rounds on social media, so does the hashtag BareShelvsBiden, which has been an active hashtag over the last couple of days, with many venting frustrations over not being able to find what they are looking for and looking for someone to blame. Though it has been unclear exactly what is causing the shortages at each individual store being shared on social, we know that surging demand for supplies through the holidays put a strain on the already troubled supply chain, on top of COVID-related staffing shortages and bad weather that slowed production and delivery of groceries and goods.
Fox's Laura Ingle. The Northeast is bracing for extreme cold Tuesday that's expected to reach a wind chill of minus 40 degrees in some northern areas and is closing some schools. Boston's public school system says it won't be open because the high is only expected to reach 12 degrees with a wind chill of minus 8. That minus 40 wind chill is expected in western Maine. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
An easily overlooked part of covering our home is what's inside of it. Over time, we buy things we don't want to lose, but don't update our contents coverage. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
one final note here, and that is that this article talks about the maximum number of students, which runs at about 28, depending on grade level. So the board union contract does set class size maximums for different levels of education. And if the denture-challenged president of GFT, Tim Fedenko, would look at the Every Child Act, he'd see that adequate public education means public schools which, at the minimum, provide one, a certified teacher for every class in a ratio established by relative collective bargaining agreements. So the other day, people on the Board of Education were talking of getting the legislature a waiver from the legislature, which I point out isn't possible. You might ask Tim, since this is a term in the contract, it might very well be that Tim would waive that for you.
If he had teeth.
Making sure that he took good care of his dentures in the process. But anyhow, I guess the point that I keep coming back to, when Tim said that, Tim Fedenko said that the Every Child Act had no teeth, obviously there's a little pride of authorship there. I worked on that act for 2 years in the 27th Guam legislature, got it in pretty good shape. I couldn't get it out of committee thanks to two people in the 27th Guam legislature. I won't mention their names, but their initials were Ben Pangilinan and Lourdes Leon Guerrero. Yeah, the 28th, we finally got the majority. I was able to get it out, it was bill number 1, and it passed relatively quickly. Now, in the process of putting that bill together, I met with all kinds of people. I met with the Nelsons. I met with Ione Wolf. I met with Matt Rector, who was the president of the GFT at the time. So they all had, they all had some input into what went into that bill to provide an adequate public education. And when I see things like the president of a union that I bear some responsibility for because I wasn't the mother, but maybe I was the midwife at the time that the thing was born.
Yikes.
And the purpose of the GFT at the time was to vigorously represent teachers and to work to provide children of Guam with a good education. That's why we set the thing up in the beginning. And when I see a president who says, well, the law doesn't have any teeth and the cross-leveling won't work, and does absolutely nothing to vigorously represent teachers or to make the situation better, it's the kind of thing that I think needs to be talked about on talk radio. If I'm too too biased, so be it. I'm too biased, but that's the way I see it. Okay, next item on the card, Drive-Thru Jack versus KFC plus Taco Bell. Yeah, we have a regular caller. He hasn't been calling for about a week, though, has he, Jose?
No, haven't heard from him.
Yeah. Drive-Thru Jack, who I don't know much about the guy. I remember at one time when I came out of Mass at church down in Tuman, that Jack said he saw me and he thought that I saw him, but if I did, it didn't register. So I wouldn't know Drive-Thru Jack from Adams off Ox.
Both you and I don't know Jack.
We don't know Jack. But he calls in a lot, and he perhaps has a job that causes him to be on the road a lot, because one time he called in from a drive-thru, and at the time that he called in, he was ordering his his supper from the attendant at the drive-thru. So we had a three-way conversation. Jack, me, and the drive-thru waitress. And it was pretty interesting. And Jack has been Drive-Thru Jack ever since then. And we kind of depend on him to be our go-to guy for drive-thrus. So when I saw this item that ran in the Post, I immediately thought of Jack. And you'll see that it doesn't name Jack, but then again, it doesn't say, the article doesn't say that it wasn't Jack. So here it goes. Jay San Nicolas was getting lunch with his 2 children at the KFC restaurant in Machechi on Sunday when a pickup suddenly collided head-on with his vehicle as they were about to leave the drive-thru. He had spotted the truck being towed by another car just moments earlier near Isengsong Road, unaware of what was about to occur. Looks like maybe the other driver didn't toe the line. We got in line and we were in the drive-thru about to get our food. I was going to call Tall Tales, but the food came too soon. Then I look up and I see this truck again being pulled, but I guess the rope snapped as they were taking the turn up towards Machechi. The truck hits the center island, and next thing you know, it came straight at us, San Nicolas said. The kids were looking at it like, wow. Then I told the kids to hold on, and boom, he flew over the parking median and right into us. Now, when I read this part, I thought maybe the guy thought the guy was hungry for Chinese food. And he thought he was pulling into Jerry Kitchen. Or maybe he was nearing the end of his career with the government of Guam, and he thought that instead of KFC, he thought he was pulling into the retirement fund up in Mighty. All of these things crossed my mind.
You know, there was a big article in the paper admonishing the driver of this blue truck, saying traditionally we run red vehicles into places.
Yeah, your color. Yeah, he needs to pay more attention to this, right? Yeah, I ought to draw up a chart for driving into Chinese restaurants. Red truck, yes. Blue trucks, no. Right? Blame the Republicans. It's the Reds. Yeah, the blue Nissan pickup that hit him was being towed by what appeared to be a late 2000 model Santa Fe or Tucson. The driver in that car didn't turn back to check on the man he was towing. San Nicolas tried to talk to the driver following the crash while at the same time caring for his children who were inside his vehicle. He didn't even ask if we were okay. He didn't even ask if we had gotten our order. He was just looking at the truck like he was trying to get away. I said, "Dude, where are you going?" He was scratching his head trying to look away. I said, "There was a car that was pulling you. Where did that car go?" And so I guess he went to the side of the road to look for the truck. My youngest was crying at the time. Then I looked up and saw he was farther away, and I said, "Hey, man, you're not trying to run away. Get your ass back here." I was carrying my boy, and when I looked around the vehicle and then looked to see where the guy went, he was already gone. San Nicolas said the suspect took off behind Machechi Plaza towards Dedido Mall. I'm not glad about it, but I'm happy that no one was seriously injured. That guy was hurt. I could have chased him and caught him, but I couldn't. He said as he also noticed the suspect left a screwdriver in the truck's ignition.
Mm-hmm.
Stolen truck.
Mm-hmm.
He stole it. He couldn't get it started. He called his buddy. "Hey, come and pull this." Yeah. I was bummed out that I fell victim to a hit and run and the guy split. He said he was an older guy who kind of looked like he was on drugs. He described the suspect as being about 5'10" with a thin build, dark complexion, possibly local, in his late 40s to early 50s. There's been no word from the Guam Police Department if an arrest has been made. However, Chief of Police Steve Ignacio said, "We were on this case from the get-go." GPD has not provided information about the crash. Despite the incident, San Nicolas said he's just grateful that he and his children were able to get away unharmed. It could have been worse. So You know, as I read this, several things went through my mind. Was it drive-through Jack? No, drive-through Jack wouldn't do something like that.
Well, what time did this happen?
Uh,
Well, definitely not at 5:45.
yeah. Yeah, drive-through Jack would have been with us on Tall Tales at 17:45.
I would just a bit of advice here. He said the guy looked like he was on drugs.
Yeah.
I would say he's probably 20 to 30 years old and looks 40 to 50.
That could very well be, yeah. So I don't think it was drive-through Jack, but drive-through Jack is probably plugged into the drive-through participants intelligence network. So I'm going to suggest that drive-through Jack hook up with the most dangerous man in the room, also known as R. Carl. And I think drive-through Jack and R. Carl will be able to track down both of these miscreants. It's shocking that people would do things like this in a drive-through. But even more shocking, L.A. Taco Bell worker fatally shot during an argument over a fake $20 bill. A Los Angeles Taco Bell worker was fatally shot Saturday night by a customer who tried to purchase a drive-through order with a phony $20 bill, a report said. Phony $20 bill. Where have I heard that before? George Floyd.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. The victim, identified by relatives as Alejandro Garcia, was working with his son at a fast food restaurant when he was killed about 11 p.m. The shooting happened after Alejandro's son got into an argument with two men who tried to pay for their order with a fake bill, relatives said. During the argument, one of the men started shooting, according to the report. Garcia's son tried to close the drive-through window to stop the bullets, but at least one of them made it inside and struck his father in the torso. My nephew was close by, so he closed the window, but the shots went in. Garcia's cousin, Nancy Garcia del Sol, told the news outlet. Garcia got shot in the heart, and that's what killed him. He died there in front of his son's present, Garcia's son added. I never realized that drive-thrus were such dangerous places, Jose. Maybe the next time we call, we need to caution drive-through Jack.
Wear your seatbelt.
If you're going to go to drive-thrus, maybe you need some body armor. Yeah, or maybe you just shouldn't go to drive-thrus anymore, drive-through Jack. It kind of hampers the show because, you know, drive-through Jack's three-way conversations with me when he's ordering his supper are some good features on Tall Tales, but we got to look out for our listeners. Okay, next item on the card is New York City versus U.S. citizens.
What is wrong with them?
They live in New York. I guess that's about the only thing I can say. I remember reading somewhere that 1 out of 8, as we're 1 out of 11 Americans live in greater New York. More than 800 non-residents and dreamers in New York City will have access to the ballot box as soon as next year, after Mayor Eric Adams allowed legislation approved by the City Council to automatically become law. You know, we had such high hopes for Eric Adams after Bill de Blasio, but he looks like the same old stuff. The first elections in which non-citizens would be allowed to vote are in 2023. And here's a quote from Idanis Rodriguez. We build a stronger democracy when we include the voices of immigrants, said former city council member Idanis Rodriguez, who led the charge to win approval for the legislation. Rodriguez, who Adams appointed as his transportation commissioner, thanked the mayor for his support and expected a vigorous defense against any legal challenges. Adams recently cast uncertainty over the election when he raised concern about the month-long residency standard, but later said those concerns did not mean he would veto the bill. So you got to be a permanent resident or a dreamer and have lived in New York for a month before you can vote. But Adams was concerned, you got to be here for a whole month before you can vote? How about the folks who just drive in from New Jersey overnight? Shouldn't they be able to vote? Adams said he looked forward to the law bringing millions more into the democratic process. I guess
Process or party?
Process, yeah. I believe that New Yorkers should have a say in their government, which is why I have and will continue to support this important legislation, Adams said in a statement released Saturday night. He added that his earlier concerns were put at ease after what he called productive dialogue with his colleagues. Opponents say the council lacks the authority on its own to grant voting rights to non-citizens and should have first sought action by state lawmakers. Some states, including Alabama, Arizona, Colorado, Florida, adopted rules that would preempt any attempt to pass laws like the one in New York City. So here's what that means. Cities have charters. They're chartered by the state government. And the state government possesses all the political power that a state can exercise, but it can delegate some of its powers to a city. But if the state doesn't delegate it, then the city doesn't have it. And apparently the argument here is that under New York state law, the city of New York doesn't have the power to change the rules about who can vote. But apparently Eric Adams and Bill de Blasio don't care. And of course, looking at it through my political spectrum, it really doesn't matter. Because even if their non-citizens voting is set aside by the courts, they still get bragging rights. We stuck out for you folks as they go to the state legislature and try to change the laws. So this really sounds crazy, allowing U.S. people who aren't U.S. citizens to vote in anything at all. Well, believe it or not, the Constitution does not limit voting to citizens. And here's one that you probably thought you'd never hear. That is that the first time that, or the last time that non-U.S. citizens voted in a presidential election was 1920. 1924 was the first time we elected a president without the vote of any non-citizen. So the U.S. Constitution doesn't require you to be a citizen to vote for anything. Now, also, there's no constitutional right to vote either. Yeah. Now, remember, our Constitution is a constitution of negative rights. So I'll give you a little school on that. The right, this is the 15th Amendment, the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. So you can't deny it for those reasons. It doesn't say you can't deny it for some other reason. And of course here, this protection only goes to citizens. So you could deny the vote in New York to people on the basis of race.
As long as they're not a citizen.
As long as they're not a citizen. Then we have let's see, the 20... Yeah, the 23rd Amendment, the district constituting the seat of government for the United States shall appoint in such manner as the Congress may direct a number of electors of president and vice president equal to the whole number of senators and representatives in the Congress to which the district would be entitled if it were a state, but in no event more than the least populous state. This worked against the district in a couple of elections when the district would have been entitled to 2 electoral votes. I mean, to 4 electoral votes based on population. Then we have the 24th Amendment, the right of citizens of the United States to vote in any primary or other election for president, vice president, electors to president or vice president, or the senators or representatives in Congress shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state by reason of failure to pay any poll tax. Now, this one was introduced a long time ago. It was ratified on January 23. This is one of the Jim Crow rules that was used to keep blacks from voting. Then we have the 26th Amendment, the right of citizens of the United States who are 18 years of age or older to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of age. Yeah. So you see, it's not granting the right to vote. It's saying you can't deny the right to vote. And then we have one that the gals all like. That's the 19th Amendment. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of sex. That's it. So if New York law allows the city of New York to determine who can vote, that's the way it's going to go. It's not a constitutional question.
That's why I'm curious. So the Constitution on votes doesn't restricts or stops restrictions in federal elections or national elections and state elections?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how would, well, probably this is probably a subject for another show, talking about this Right to Vote Act that's going on in Congress or in the legislature right now,
Yeah.
how that affects states' abilities to restrict voting.
Well, my recollection is that it flies in the face of the Electors Clause that says the electors shall be chosen by the state legislatures. And of course, that's what, to me, that was the important issue in the last election, not how many bags were hidden under the table or something like that. But I've mentioned this before, in 6 battleground states, something like 25,000 votes going the other direction would have caused Trump to be elected president. In those 6 battleground states, the electors were not chosen by the legislatures. They were chosen by the governor, the courts, the election clerks, or somebody else like that. So, you know, what the Democrats are screaming about, we've got to stop voter suppression, the Republicans' voter suppression. And what the Republicans are saying, we've got to make sure that we set up the election so that there can't be any cheating. It seems we're both kind of saying the same thing.
Logic versus emotion.
Exactly. So whether this works or not, this won't be the last you see of it. Non-citizens voting in elections.
It seems like a precursor to the Right to Vote Act.
Yeah. And also you'll see other states doing the same thing. And in the bluest of states, they'll want non-citizens to vote in presidential elections because the theory is, guess which party they'll vote for. All right, let's head for the 7th inning stretch here.
Need to finish the job or start one the right way? Get the right stuff at East West Rental Center. You can switch to easy mode using industrial strength equipment. With years of experience helping builders, East West Rental gives you exactly what you need. Tools for landscaping, concrete, lifts, trucks, tables, tents, chairs, water blasters, excavators, forklifts, air compressors, and more. Call East West Rental Center at 646-1463 or visit them in Upper Tumont. Open Monday to Saturday from 7 to 5, Sundays 8 to 5.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck. Zero down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com.
Seventh inning stretch, Wrigley Field in Chicago, the world's most beautiful ballpark. Next on the card, Hillary versus Brandon. Let's go, Brandon. And this is something I got out of trendingpolitics.com. Hillary Clinton appears to throw shade at the White House, implies Biden is not sane.
You don't say.
Yeah, Biden is not saying, I don't want to get into pots and kettles and things like that. But Hillary Clinton is back in the media spotlight again with a recent interview with NBC's Willie Geist. If you ever watched Morning Joe, Willie is a sensible one on Morning Joe.
Ouch.
Yeah. Which will air in full on his podcast, Sunday Sit Down. The failed 2016 presidential candidate appeared to criticize radical Democrats for criticizing swing districts, as you were for jeopardizing swing districts, and the White House for not being stable and sane. So what do you see as the state of the Democratic Party right now, Geist asked. I think that it is time for some, careful thinking about wins elections, and not just in deep blue districts where a Democrat and a liberal or so-called progressive Democrat is going to win, Hillary said. I understand why people want to argue for their priorities. That's what they believe they were elected to do. So look, I am all about having vigorous debates. I think it's good and gives people a chance to be part of the process. But at the end of the day, it means nothing if we don't have Congress that'll get things done, and we don't have a White House that we can count on to be sane and sober and stable and productive. That certainly isn't the White House you got now, is it, Hillary? Certainly this criticism would be impossible if the Biden presidency had a track record that was much the opposite. It seems that Hillary Clinton is still bitter over her defeat by Donald Trump and believes she can do a better job than Joe Biden. Well, that wouldn't be hard. Even Hillary could probably do that. To be fair, nearly any other qualified American could do a better job than Joe Biden at this point. I'm not available, guys.
Even a caveman.
On Thursday, Donald Trump revealed a lengthy post listing the many documented failures of the Biden presidency. It bears reading in full. So, even Hillary thinks enough is enough. Okay, let's move on to the next item on the card here, which is, where did it go? just a second ago. Yeah, here it is. This is diversity, inclusion, and equity versus equality. And I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I've got 10 politically correct but factually false phrases to stop using immediately. The first item on the list is the mainstream media. Don't use that term anymore. Follow the guidance from Tall Tales and talk in terms of the media cabal or the media conspiracy. Don't use gender when you mean sex. Don't use the word sex reassignment surgery. Sex is not assigned at birth or ever. If it is not assigned, it can't be reassigned. Surgical procedures that remove or conceal the outward appearance of a man's or woman's reproductive organs are most accurately described as genital mutilation or amputation. Don't use democracy when you mean republic, which is what we have, and the Democrats are trying to kill it as fast as they can. Don't talk about abortion doctors and abortion clinics. They're not clinics, and they're really, it's a stretch to call them doctors. Anti-discrimination. Often anti-discrimination policies actually refer to legal preferences. That's what we're going to be talking about here. Based on sex, race, socioeconomic status, or some other category. The Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, for example, released an anti-racist agenda for medicine earlier this month that would provide preferential care based on race for Black and Latino patients. That's where we're going to get to in this next piece here. And don't use equity or equality when you mean the other. Equity and equality sound similar but have different implications today. Webster's 1828 dictionary defines equality as the same degree of dignity or claims as the equality of men in the scale of being an equality of rights. The Declaration of Independence assertion that all men are created equal recognizes this equal value and dignity in personhood of each human being. Equity has traditionally been a common legal term referring to civil remedies. It can also mean the impartial distribution of justice. But in the jargon of identity politics, equity describes a policy that recognizes that each person has different circumstances and allocates the exact resources and opportunities needed to reach an equal outcome. That takes you back to anti-discrimination. So, the next item on the card is diversity, inclusion, and equity versus equality. And this came from Town Hall. It's an article by Landon Mion. And it's titled, FDA Issues Guidance Prioritizing People for Monoclonal Antibodies Based on Their Race. Guidance from the Food and Drug Administration says that some people may be considered high risk based on their race and will be prioritized for monoclonal antibodies and oral antivirals used to treat COVID-19. The agency issued a fact sheet for healthcare providers, which was updated in December, notifying them that it had approved emergency use of authorizations of Sotrovimab, a monoclonal antibody proven effective against Omicron. However, the antibodies are only approved for patients considered to be high risk. Medical conditions or factors such as race or ethnicity may place individual patients at high risk for progression to severe COVID-19. The guidance reads, adding that the authorization of Sotrovimab under the EUA is not limited to medical conditions or factors outlined by the agency. And then they talk about old age, obesity, pregnancy, chronic kidney disease, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, all the things that Dr. Friedman talked about in the term metabolic syndrome are listed as medical conditions and factors that would make a person high risk. Similar, New York State Department last week revealed its plans to distribute COVID treatments like monoclonal antibody treatment and antiviral pills. The plan states that a person must have a medical condition or other factors that increase their risk for severe illness to be eligible. One risk factor included in the plan is being a person of color due to long-standing systemic health and social inequities. Non-white race or Hispanic Latino ethnicity should be considered a risk factor, or less long-standing systemic health and social inequities have contributed to an increased risk of severe illness and death from COVID, the memo reads. All in the name of equity. So I'm going to do a show one of these days and write up maybe a short memorandum and send it off to the Black Lives Matter folks, Kai Nishi Coates, the Reverend Jackson, the Reverend Sharpton, and Tina Rose Munya Barnes, asking that efforts be made to overrule Brown versus Board of Education. Brown versus Board of Education is a landmark desegregation case. Says you can't, basically says you're not supposed to discriminate against people based on race.
Now, how do they figure somebody like, let's say, Barack Obama, who has one parent who is black and another parent who is white? Is there a test?
Well, I suppose they could only give him a half dose of monoclonal antibody.
It was very similar to a news story that's going around of a university telling its professors to grade based on the skin color of their student. I think you've heard of that story. I think a professor fought back against it and was removed from the university.
You can't have that.
Yeah. And he was questioning, how am I supposed to grade? Is there a sliding scale? Am I only supposed to give 50% of somebody is of ancestry?
Well, the interesting thing here is that when you talk about racism, in my mind, what it used to be is you start out with stereotypes, and you attach stereotypes to people based on their appearance, their skin color, their physical features, etc. And you say, all blue people are dishonest, therefore never hire a blue person in your store. So you start out with stereotypes, and once you got the stereotypes down pat, then you work on discriminating against people because they belong to the stereotype. That's what racism used to be. It's got taken on a whole new meaning now. I think racism now means doing well in anything, for one thing. That makes you suspect. But they've adopted the same paradigm. First of all, we'll set up these stereotypes, and then we'll act on the stereotypes because we don't want to be racist. So, good point with Barack Obama, whose mother was white. How about Sidney Poitier, who died at 94 just a couple days ago?
Yep.
One of my very favorite actors. Man, that guy was terrific.
Guess who's coming to dinner?
Yeah, The Defiant Ones. Remember that with Tony Curtis? Two inmates were handcuffed together and they escaped. One was white, one was black. And the white guy hated the black guy, but they had to work out some kind of an accommodation to get away from the corrections guys. Very good movie. Yeah, so he lived to 94. And, was he more susceptible to some disease than somebody who dies here on the island at 60? It's just a terrible way to practice medicine. to practice anything, but certainly to practice medicine. And where is that going to go now? Are we going to say, well, we've got too many white airline pilots. We've got to make sure that we've got diversity and inclusion and equity with our airline pilots. So we're going to take all these guys, some of whom can't fly airplanes, but by God, we're going to have diversity. Yeah, so that's the story. So if you're going to get sick, try not to be white. If you're going to get sick, you're better off being a person of color, apparently. Let's see, I got another one here that I was going to pick up. I thought. Yeah, I'm going to go to Churchill Downs, and coming out of Churchill Downs, we're going to talk about the 20-page insert.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Ooh, how did I do that? Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky, the home stretch of tall tales for one more day here. And I've got a couple folks here in the green room, probably another Joe and our Carl and Frenchie. Well, it's been a while since we've had Frenchie on the show, so our Carl, make it quick. We got Frenchie waiting in the green room.
Yeah, I will. I'll make it very quick. Just a comment about the distribution of vaccines based on race. The darker skin tone people with more melatonin, or melanin, I mean, they do tend to have lower vitamin D levels. The average American is about 42% deficient. Hispanics are over 60% deficient, and black Americans are over 80% deficient. But that has nothing to do with race. It's the fact that having more melanin in the skin, the vitamin D tends to be created at a slower rate because of, historically they came from from areas where there was more sunshine, so they didn't need to develop as much vitamin D as quickly as white people did. So anyway, I just wanted to insert that, and if anyone is interested, excellent resource is MedCram by Dr. Schultz. He's quadruple board certified. He's excellent, and he breaks down the studies. Anyway, I just wanted to toss that in. I'll listen to what Frenchie has to say.
Okay, our Carl, thanks for calling. Vitamin D is really important. There's no question about it. As the human race moved out of Africa, where it started, and headed north, those who, because of some kind of mutation, developed lighter skin were able to survive in northern latitudes. That's why you got guys like Nelson up there in Scandinavia with very pale skin. Okay, I don't know about how it worked out in France, but let's see, I got Frenchie on line 2. We want to talk about the Second Amendment, equity versus equality, right, Frenchie?
Yeah, well, the Second Amendment and then of course the usual brainwash anti-Second Amendment people that they all have one thing in common. Number one, they know nothing about guns. Usually they are telling whoopers like it's unbelievable. You would think they would do some research before they do anything else, but they don't. They are too lazy. The other thing is with the Second Amendment and with many other issues, social issues nowadays, what you see from the left is a reduction of what is called ad Hitlerum. So anything that is not an argument they can sustain, you become a Nazi, you become a fascist, you become an extremist. That's what they call reduction ad Hitlerum, and basically this is the most potent argument that they have. If you don't agree with them, your words are and your thoughts become violent because you are a fascist and a Nazi and an extremist. So basically what they are telling you is a little bit like the little red guards during the Cultural Revolution in China. We were not that far off in 2020, when the Antifa and the BLMs were burning and looting and everything. That was the physical expression of that far left thinking. And you know, we see the result of having all the extremists from the 60s and 70s. While you were in Vietnam, they were demonstrating against everything else, and they were trying not to go to Vietnam. And now they are populating the corridors of power, and their children and grandchildren are the brainwashed students of the universities of today, and they are the future dictators of tomorrow. And if you don't believe this, just watch what has happened over the last 2 years in countries like New Zealand, Australia, and Canada, who are Anglo-Saxon countries like the U.S., but they do not have the U.S. Constitution. You ended up with extreme lockdowns, church closures, draconian emergency rules, which they are still applying to the point of being totally ridiculous. And those countries, which used to be beacons of democracy and freedom, are now the flag bearers of intimidation, single thought, and basically authoritarianism. And that's what we've got. And you were laughing that, saying that airlines soon will say, well, we need more of this or more of that. You know, you do not know how right you are when you see that the airline that basically serves Guam has decided, I think it was last October, the CEO decided he no longer wanted to have white male pilots, and he's going to have his own school to have minorities and females being trained as pilots. Are we going to have better pilots because we're going to have minorities and female? Looking at the Senate of Guam, one can wonder, you know. We were going to have a wonderful political situation with all those females in the Senate, and what we have is the worst representation we've had in years. So the other thing that you see from that way of thinking is pushing false science and medicine as a new religion, because we have taken out God out of the centers of our life. You know, You see that a lot. Now that we are going to a less and less religious-based society, we're having more and more need to replace that religion by something else. And so now we are pushing for all kind of fake gods, gods of science, gods of medicine, and a lot of those things are based on half-cooked ideas. And the danger is that the eugenics of the late 19th, early 20th century that brought us the Nazis, the communists, and so on, are raising their ugly head all over again under the pretense of that pandemic that we're having, which is no longer a pandemic. But so there's a lot of things for us to think about the consequences of the choice we've made over the last 50 years. And I don't see too much positiveness coming from the new young people, except for a few exceptions, coming from those universities. They're even worse than their parents and grandparents.
Yeah, it's scary, isn't it, Frenchie? How such a wonderful country could be taken so far off the track in, a relatively short period of time.
Look at Canada, which was supposed to be a fantastic country, pretty close to the United States, not to the level of the U.S., but still. Now you have a prime minister that forces people to go to church outside in the cold and the snow because he doesn't allow church to be open. And that's one step, and then the next step, and the next step. You're seeing a lot of pushback in Europe right now, but we'll probably have violence before anything comes back to a more center part of the spectrum. We are dealing with...
Gotta go, Frenchie.
With cuckoos.
Yeah, gotta go. Right. Good talking to you. Thanks for calling. Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Heading back to school in Chicago, I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. The City and Teachers Union reached a tentative deal last night to reopen classrooms with increased COVID safety measures.
Ultimately, I'm very proud of the fact that the members of the Chicago Teachers Union took a stand around this.
Teachers Union President Jesse Sharkey.
It's not a perfect agreement, but it's something that we can hold our heads up about.
Mayor Lori Lightfoot says she'll always be on the side of students and parents.
I'm sure many students will be excited to get back into the classroom with their teachers and peers, and their parents and guardians can now breathe a much-deserved sigh of relief.
Teachers return to class today, but students don't return until Wednesday. The deal comes the same day the U.S. set a global record for new COVID cases in a single day. The U.S. reported nearly 1.5 million new cases yesterday. The White House announcing that insurance companies will pay for 8 over-the-counter COVID tests per person each month. Press Secretary Jen Psaki defending the amount of testing that's already being done.
300 million tests are done in this country every month. So there's enormous progress being made.
Psaki says a website to order at-home tests should be online later this month. New York City lowers the number killed in a horrific high-rise fire from 19 to 17, while dozens of injured remain hospitalized.
FDNY Fire Officers Association President Lieutenant James McCarthy says the door to the apartment where the fire started was left open, sending fire into the hallway and stairwell.
A building built with federal subsidies that didn't have to adhere to New York City fire codes, so there was different fire protection in this building.
Investigators say a malfunctioning space heater was the cause of the fire. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
America's listening to Fox News.